Oh my gosh, I'm so annoyed
Hey,
right now.
welcome to 24/7 Marriage Podcast.
Ah!
Well, because there's times and moments where we are doing this podcast from the marriage lab,
Javi,
and
sometimes,
it's not.
all the time.
It doesn't always work as we anticipated and expected, and so we have had some technical difficulties. But here we are. You don't know about that because you didn't listen to the bloopers that we had. But here we are. Listen,
This is round
today,
three. Round three.
today. The reason why we're doing this podcast and what we're going to be talking
It's
about it because it is
election
election day.
day.
This is an important day in our country.
Yes.
Every election is important. This one is, I believe, especially pivotal for us.
Yes.
But here's the thing. You have a responsibility to go out and vote.
Yes.
And that is your right, your privilege that men and women have given them their lives for. So you have this privilege to exercise that right to go out and vote. So we're telling you, if you do nothing else, go and vote. Exercise that right.
Yes.
And if you want to complain about things and don't vote, I don't want to hear it. You can't complain about what you permit.
No.
So you have to go and exercise that right to vote. And regardless of where you're going and what you're leaning to, listen, go out and make that decision. Because here's the thing. It is so needed right now.
Yes.
And why we're going to talk about certain things on this podcast today is because we want to come back to this place of recognizing like what we stand for, but also what we're seeing in culture and society.
Yeah.
And right now, we are living in a culture society that is set against
tearing down
the nuclear family, that is set against tearing down the worth, the sanctity, and the value of marriage.
Yes.
That is said about trying to redefine what that looks like, degrade marriage and the covenant that God established from the very beginning, that in marriage we would image Him.
Yes.
We have young men who are apathetic, lazy,
weak,
head in the sand, sitting in their mom's basement, in their chonies, playing video games and watching pornography. And we're wondering where all these young men have gone. As culture, we've told them, right? Well, you don't need to do this. You can just get what you want. You can just have what you want. We have this red pill mentality that is happening with young men, and they're not rising up. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing when we see men who don't stand in that place to lead and love and guard and guide and govern in their families, we're seeing families crumble.
Yes.
And that's the thing right now.
Well, because thriving marriages are the backbone to thriving societies.
Those thriving families.
Sorry, but thriving marriages has a thriving marriage has
Yes.
to happen first in
Yes.
order for there to be flourish within that family unit.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Societies, cultures are built on family.
Yes.
Strong. When they fall, it's when the family begins to crumble.
Yeah.
And that's the assault right now, to tear down the family. You see in culture the assault against children, right? The assault against men and women.
Yeah.
You're seeing that because if they can tear down the marriage, then they can get the family.
Yeah.
And that's the intent of, I think, what we're living in now, but also the enemy's intent is to tear down the marriages, because then we see the fabric of family dissolving and the fabric of our culture and society begin to break down.
Well, it's the whole foundation of what 24/7 marriage is about, because we're about restoring hope, redeeming stories, and building strong marriages. That is who we are. That is the foundation from which everything springboards off of.
Yeah, it does.
If it doesn't, we know pretty quickly when we get asked to do something, or it's like, wait a minute, does it align? Does it springboard off of what our foundation is?
Yeah.
Because that is what our heart is. That's what our heartbeat for 24/7 marriage
and on
is
an
all
election
about.
day, it's important for us to establish, and for just as a reminder, as we're doing this podcast, about what we believe and what we stand for, and inviting you into that. We're going to play a clip from something here in just a little bit, because I think it portrays, I don't want to say the stupidity, but the mindset.
No, it's stupid.
Oftentimes of individuals and culture, and how they see and value marriage and the worth of marriage.
Well, because we're in a society that's become very transactional, very consumeristic. So when we apply consumerism to relationships, it becomes very transactional. What will you do for me?
Yeah.
And this is what I'll do for you.
Yeah.
So we take that into
Factual.
marriage, and it's, what are you doing for me? What am I getting? What am I not getting? If I'm not getting those things, then I'm out, Javier. I'm going to go and buy the next model.
I'm going to go for my happiness.
I'm going to go to the next thing. But what happens is there's a wake of destruction behind every marriage that falls apart, because generations are being impacted. So there's children and offspring from these failed relationships that are going to
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
suffer the consequences
Yeah.
of our
And I'm
choices.
telling you now, I'm not, again, I'm not coming. If you're divorced and you've walked through that, like, I'm not coming against you. Like, I don't know your story. I don't know what's taking place or the
Yeah.
reasons, but I'm telling you what we're seeing now is basically the consequences, is the seeds that were planted in generations of the view of marriage, whether good, unhealthy, it was divorce. Like, we're now seeing the fruit of this in so many marriages, of what it was planted and what they saw from past generations, and the degrade. I cannot say the word.
Degradation.
Yes, the degrading of marriage, the worth of it, the work that it takes, the beauty of it, and what God intended for marriage to be, and the picture of, because marriage is a picture of God's grace, His love, His mercy to a world that is watching
Yeah.
around
And
us.
let's just define
Is
marriage really quick. Biblical covenant marriage is between one man and one woman and God.
Yeah.
Period.
And so that is what He established from the very beginning, and we're just speaking what Scripture says, okay? And so we are seeing such a breakdown and assault against families and against marriages like never before.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because we know when that begins to break down, everything else around it begins to break down. And so I would ask you, like, how are you contending and fighting for your family? How are you contending and fighting for your marriage? Is your marriage evidence of God's grace, His love, and His mercy? Not perfect, not problem free. Is it, but are you evidencing that, man, we are working, we are honoring God, we're moving towards one another, that the people around us can see God's image
Yeah.
and how we unconditionally love one another? Is your marriage a picture of that? Again, not in perfection. Are you establishing a marriage that the next generation can point to your marriage and say, this is the picture of what we want to build for our family and for our grandkids and so on? Do
What
you become the
yeah.
pillar, the remembrance? Is your marriage the pillar, the remembrance that future generations will say, that's what we want, that's what we desire, that's a picture of what God intended for marriage? Is your marriage that? Are you living that way? Because that's how it should be, and you can get there.
Yeah. There's a scripture that I share at the begin on Friday night at boot camp, and it's in the Old Testament. Do you know what?
No,
I can't
I'm gonna leave
remember.
our podcast. I need water.
Oh, okay, honey. Bye. Oh, the light went out too. So many things are happening. This is so fun. But there's a scripture in Old Testament where uh they talk about an Ebenezer, and they lay this stone down as a remembrance of what God did. And I think that that is so crucial and so pivotal of, is there something in your marriage? Is there something that in generations to come they would say, this happened here, that my parents fought for their marriage. They almost didn't make it. They went through a really hard season, but God, but they made it through. And that Ebenezer, that remembrance could be the offspring of more children who are in marriage, thriving, growing. We just have so much going on. You know
This
what?
is real life in the marriage lab.
We don't have a podcast studio, people. Okay. So if you were expecting it to be like this really high budget,
Listen, we invite you into the marriage lab, which
no,
is,
we invite you into our life,
yeah, and that's just,
and
and this
we
is
don't know
just
what's
part
going to
of it.
happen.
So it's okay. You
Yeah.
just have to let, that's
Yeah.
just where we're at. And
And
so
our ring light has gone out.
but listen, so what Shannon was saying is no, that's incredibly good. Like, this is like what we stand for when we talk about, restoring hope and redeeming stories. Like, we believe that there is hope, and that so many maybe of you who listen to this, that you have lost that place of feeling hope. And we know that hope can be restored, and that hope, it needs to be not in man, not in culture, not in social media, but in what God can do. That hope should be placed just in your spouse, but that should hope be placed in God, and seeing what He can and what He will do, because He is able. But the redeeming of stories is like really powerful, because we get to walk alongside couples, and we want your stories to be redeemed. Like, the story that is being written at times it gets shaped by the narrative of other people or by what you've seen. But that story can be rewritten. The story that maybe you're living in right now, where things are broken, they're difficult, you're struggling, that can be rewritten. That can be redeemed and brought back to its place to be restored whole again. That your story would be one that, yes, it's got difficulties and struggles, and it's got joy. It's got all these pieces to what makes an incredible story. But it's your story, but it's being redeemed to be able to point towards God and what God can and what He will do. And the whole part of building strong marriages, that's building. Like, it takes work. The
Yeah.
building of a marriage takes work. And so it's a constant thing. It's why 24/7 marriage, right? To build something beautiful, you're going to have to invest the time and be intentional about it. It doesn't just happen. We're not building it. We're not building your marriage. We cannot build your marriage. That is a work that you have to do.
We can
We
give
can
you
provide
the
tools
tools
and we can give you resources and we can give you
to
some
building.
nails and some things, but you've got to do the work and you got to build it. And the thing is, you have to have a mindset in a culture that's set against tearing that down, that regardless of what we face, we will continue to press in to honor God, that in the midst of like, God gets the glory in the midst of the most difficult moments and seasons and the assaults upon our life. And that's
Yeah.
what's happening, is that everything is pushing against trying to move you away from unity and get you distracted and disconnected within your marriage. That's the play of the enemy right now in this season, in this moment. Let me get you distracted. Let me get you off course.
Yeah.
Let me put this in front of you. Let me get you to say that you deserve this,
Yeah.
that you should have this, because we live in this consumeristic society, like Shannon said, of what you deserve and what you should get. And that's not what we've been invited into. We've been invited into a covenant of marriage, and we get to display that to a world around us. And so it's not just about your marriage. It is not just about your marriage.
It's so much bigger than that.
I mean, and it is, so it isn't. It isn't like it is. It is what it is meant to display and to image, and what it will do to generations.
Do you know, saying that right now shocks a lot of people? Like, that falls on ears. They're like, I've never heard that. Like, most people have a framed image of marriages. Um, we're going to go to the church. I'm going to have a big wedding. I'm going to wear the white dress, and we're going to live in a house, and we're going to both work, and maybe we'll have kids.
Yeah,
And it's like, that's it.
yeah,
But what we're saying is that this thing that God's inviting you into, it's so much bigger than that. Your marriage has an impact. Even if you choose to never have children or not, you can use your marriage to impact your neighbors that you live next door to, the people that you work with, those in your small group at church, like, or on a grander scale. Like, your marriage can have a generational impact and can show a broken and hurting world,
yeah,
what God's grace, mercy, love looks like on a daily basis,
yeah,
because that's what
yeah,
we get to do for
yeah.
one another.
But we have this expectation of what we want and what we want to see from marriage. And the reason why we're doing this podcast is, it is about, your marriage is under attack, and this is what we believe, right?
Yeah.
And this is why we do the work that we do at 24/7 Marriage, and believe in it so profoundly. And then it's also not just about, again, your marriage, but about you as an individual, of what needs to shift and change, and where you need to die, what you need to let go of, what you need to bring in back in, because then that begins to impact your marriage. Like, these are the things we talk about at our boot camps and workshops and all of this, because it's foundational. But you have to recognize that the enemy is prowling around, seeking who he may devour, and he absolutely knows, because it's a threat to him when a husband and wife and God is in the center. It is a threat to him, because you know who you are, you become dangerous. So that's why his whole plan right now, today, in this moment, in this society and culture we live in, is to just bring division and disunity and confusion around
Yes.
marriage, the sanctity of it, around families, and society, who's trying to take rights and privileges away from you as parents in making choices and decisions. You have to protect and fight and guard over those things. And men, you have to stand at a guard. Mark Driscoll says, he wrote a book just recently called Act Like a Man. And he says, you need to be a lion with others and a lamb
At
with your
home.
family, a
Yeah.
lamb with your family, but a lion, right?
Protects.
Protecting
Is
and
watchful.
watchful and in
Vigilant.
that place, and will attack when it needs to, will handle things when it needs to, but also being a lamb at home, being loving, being understanding, being
Yeah.
sensitive, moving towards them. It doesn't mean that you don't have that lion in you, but
No,
this
but
is what
being
we're
gentle with your spouse, like
yeah,
caretaking their heart and their
yeah,
emotions,
yeah,
like that. As a woman, and I speak for a lot of women, that's what we desire. We want you to be a lion outside, and inside, I want to know that I have that, you have that lion spirit,
yeah,
but that you can gently take care of my emotions and my heart,
yeah,
and you can show up and you can serve me. But then once you go out, I know that I feel safe and protected by you.
yeah, yeah,
And that is
yeah,
really the heart of a
yeah,
woman,
yeah.
is what we desire.
Yeah. And so, like, that's the work that we do at 24/7 Marriage, is why we do what we do. It's what we stand for. And we thought it was important today to kind of bring that up again.
Yeah.
I don't know what the title of this podcast would be, but probably something like,
Javi, let's be
marriage
honest.
under attack.
Let's be honest.
Here's what we stand for. I don't know.
Are you gonna have anything to do with the
No,
title?
but I want people to get it and listen to it. So make it strong, Shannon. I know you will. I think it's important. Again, this is important that especially in a day like today, that it's understood that what we contend and what we fight for, and it's not just us. We are locking arms with others, other ministries, but also you as individuals to
Yeah.
help do this. That's why we're a partner-supported ministry. That individuals like yourself and some other organizations and churches come alongside to say we believe in the work that you are doing, and we want to be part of that work to see marriages healed and restored, but to see generations change and to really stand and lock arms together on that front line of marriage in this culture that is set against tearing it down and trying to
Yeah.
dismantle it and trying to destroy what God intended from the very beginning. And make no mistake, it is a battle. Make no mistake, it is a fight. And going back to the men, there's too many weak and passive men who are standing on the sidelines just watching, and they're expecting certain things. They're expecting their marriage to be good and things to be well, but they're not willing to step into that front line and lock arms with other men and to go to battle and to go to war
Well, they're
and
not
to
doing the hard work. They're
recognize.
not investing into it. But
No.
they definitely want their wife to show up and meet his physical needs.
Yeah, but
But
when she asks to connect emotionally, he's like, "I'm not there."
yeah.
But even just the simplicity, when people say, you need to, lead your family, like it's overwhelming to them. Like, well, I don't know how to do that. What do I do? And there's some things that we're going to develop here soon that will help you in that area about what it practically means to do those things. But show up, pray with your family, work hard, love your wife. She's not against you. She is not your enemy, right? You have an enemy. It's not your wife. Like, begin to move towards one another, begin to do the hard work, lay down your pride and your ego. And when something takes place, recognize this person's for me. They're not against me.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be okay,
Yeah.
and be able to step up into the role that you are called to be, of man of courage and of valor and of integrity and of honor, and fight, fight, fight. But just most men, they're shrinking back. They're shrinking back. They're like, I don't want to go towards Goliath. I don't want to run towards, that's scary. I don't want to run towards her. Run towards her.
Well, because they were raised by a
Pursue her.
generation of parents who everybody gets a participation award.
Yeah.
And we did them a huge disservice, because now they don't have that eager and that drive to want to try to win. It's like, well, I'm still a winner. Even if I don't try, they're still
Whatever.
going to give me an award. And listen, that translates into many mindsets that we carry into how we view work.
Yeah.
Do you know that I was just reading a statistic, ages 18 to 25, the turnover rate of how many jobs young men and women have, because as soon as they don't like their boss, or they don't like the schedule, or it just doesn't fit with their lifestyle, they quit. They can have between 12 and 15 jobs within a couple years. And I'm like, I had one job. I got one job and I stuck
Clark
with it
drugs. You were like a
until
yellow smock and like Yeah, you
and
own that.
and you worked at Mervin's. And
Mervin's was like what Kohl's is now.
yeah, and I didn't always like my job. I was first in cosmetics, and I got moved to photo. And it's like oh, okay, you don't like it, so what? Go to bed, wake up, do your job the next day. Like, this is help paying my car payment. So I was like, you do the hard work. You don't just like quit because you don't. It doesn't fit your needs. It doesn't feel good to you,
Yeah.
and that's what's destroying the fabric of America. Is this everything's based on feelings? Listen, do you get up every morning when the girls were
I
little?
don't feel like it.
Did you feel like changing a dirty
No.
diaper? Did I feel like nursing when my boobs are engorged and I'm like, haven't had a good night's sleep in months? It's like, no, but we don't base those things on feelings. It's like,
Yeah.
we just do. We
Yeah.
push through.
Yeah.
That's what creates resilience and
Yeah.
steadfastness
Yeah.
in us as
Yeah.
people.
As we wanted to play something that I think just kind of gives an example of like the mindset. This person is not the person you would go to for any marriage advice whatsoever.
No.
Should not be speaking on anything
Related
about
to
marriage, related to
but she
relationships in
is.
any way. This person is like, forget what she does, that she is a
Adult entertainer.
adult
I think
entertainer.
she's a porn star.
It's more of like the point that what she says we're hearing so often, and the reason why we're talking about it today is because as we talk about like what we stand for and what we believe in, this is the mindset that we're hearing in culture. So we wanted to be able, because we're going to do it this way.
We heard this on Matt Walsh's podcast, and so we're playing the clip that he played on his podcast of her TikTok video and her advice on marriage. So here you go.
Oh, we're comparing stats. Baby girl doesn't know that I am Tom Brady at this game. Married at 18, divorced at 21. Second marriage, married at 25, divorced at 28. Third engagement, engaged at 29, ended it at 30, but I kept the ring. I'm still keeping Tom Brady on his toes. We should not be afraid to leave these men. We are not stuck with these people. Marriage is not a sanctimonious thing. It is paperwork. It's something, it's a commitment you make to someone. But if you feel like you're not getting anything from that commitment and you're trying, you gotta go. You gotta go. You have to go. I know it's difficult to fill out paperwork and to make appointments and to do all of these things, but this is your life. Do you want to be stuck with someone? Period. This is what happens.
So this is like, okay, she's right about something. It's not sanctimonious.
It's
because
sacred.
Because it is sacred.
Yeah.
Like, so, okay.
But she probably made that mistake on accident.
Here's the thing. Like, how she talks about it, and I've heard this from people, it's just paper. It's just paper.
Yeah.
It's not just a piece of paper. Like, it is a commitment. It is a covenant. It is what you enter into. And it's not to be taken lightly and thrown away because you don't like it and you don't want to do the
Can I just highlight something Matt Walsh also said right after that, is that Tom Brady has won 7 Super Bowls. He has 7 rings because he worked hard and won something. You have 3 rings because you have 3 failed marriages. You are not the Tom Brady of marriage. You're not winning at marriage, lady.
Yeah.
And the whole filling out paperwork and all that. My first piece of advice to this woman is, if you keep choosing poorly, you're the common denominator in this math equation. So maybe your picker is broken.
Yeah, but it's not. It's this expectation that's what we're seeing right now in culture. Is why we wanted to play that. Is we're seeing these. We say like, well, like you deserve to be happy. You deserve, like, you don't need to put up with those things. Like, if you don't like that, then just you know, if you're too worried about the paperwork, you just need to do it. You just need to like leave. You're not happy. And what begins to happen is like you're trying to fulfill something, this expectation you have, instead of doing the work within the marriage to make it succeed. You cannot expect that it just happens, right? It's like you're trying to microwave the relationship, and it can't happen. You got to put it in the oven. It's got to be there. It's got to take time and effort and patience, and that's the problem here. Is with, you know, I'm not just saying women, but with men as well, not willing to pay the price, not willing to lay themselves down right? And at the same time, like, I'm sorry, who are the men that are marrying her? I'm just gonna call that out. Like, all who are the men who are marrying her? Like, you that you think this is a good idea. Like, you know what she stands for.
This is a
You
capable,
know
intelligent, and virtuous woman.
you know who she
No.
is.
Yes.
Like, when I saw that clip, the first thing I thought of, right, like, who married her? Like, why did you think that was a good idea?
Well,
Like, that
3
was
different
marriage
people married her.
material. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, this is somebody I wanna marry. Like
No,
like,
it's somebody that they wanna hook up with, and
probably so.
they just put a ring on it. That Listen, that's what it comes down to, and the thing is that, um, our friend Rich De La Mora just wrote a book called Body Count, and it's this whole thing of, like, every time you enter into a sexual relationship with somebody, you carry that into every other relationship for the end of time.
Yeah.
Like, you carry that with you, and it's like yes, she has 3 divorces under her belt, but there's also tons of other destruction
Yeah.
of her intimacy, that sexuality part of her that was meant for one husband for one lifetime, that she keeps giving away time and time again, that you're never going to get back. And I don't know if they fully understand
Yeah.
the wake of destruction
Yeah.
that is happening.
Well, but again, we play it because that's the mentality we're seeing in culture, and what we are contending and
And
fighting
people listen to that.
against.
They listen to that advice,
Well, they listen
Javier.
to that, like, because again, it is me culture. It is selfish. It is focused on what I need in my self care, and I deserve this. And the problem is, you're not going to find that because you're looking for the answer to your fulfillment in another individual that they can't provide that for you. Ultimately, they're not your ultimate validation in who you are. Only God can do that, like that, of who He says you are, as His daughter, as His son. But here you hear a person who has this flippant attitude about marriage that if you just don't like it, you don't need to put up with that. As
Leave.
opposed to saying, you know what? What if it's you, the work that you need to do? And what if the other person, the work they need to do? But you do the hard work. You come in. Like, did you expect it would be easy? Did you expect that marriage, everything would be up and to the right? Like, everything is going to work exactly as you intended? So when their expectations don't get met, what happens? They use a reason, excuse. I'm not happy. I should be happy. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not getting this. And they're constantly searching, degrading again. Like, this is what we're hearing time and time and time and time again, saying it is about you, it is about your joy, your happiness, and they degrade the sanctity of marriage that God intended it to be for life.
Well, and
with that spouse.
the crazy thing is that that's going rampant all over TikTok right now, and it's not labeled as misinformation.
No.
But we post
But
a
we
reel
will.
about how marriage is between one man and one woman, and then we've got blocked content and we're labeled as misinformation. So
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
when the Bible talks about how everything that's right will be wrong and everything that's wrong will be right, it's kind of like this topsy-turvy society.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that right now. It's everything that is virtuous, that is good, that is noble, that God has designed and laid out for us is now wicked, evil,
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
And the thing is that there's people that listen and follow her. And that's the thing that I don't like. It's like, don't lean into that mentality. Don't buy into that mentality that you can just move on and get
Yeah.
another marriage.
Yeah. And we're going to wrap it up. And I want to wrap up with this, is that sadly, we are the minority. If you are married and married for a length of time and doing the hard work and displaying God's love, and again, not perfectly, but you're walking this out and you're committed and you're in a covenant and you understand that you're a minority, you must stand up. Each and every one of us, if you're listening to this call right now, you might be struggling in your marriage, and I hear you. I want to tell you there is hope, that God is able. I want to tell you to fight. I want to tell you to restore, you move towards restoration in your marriage, to redeem that story, to build a strong marriage. That's what you're called to do. Don't quit, because your marriage will have a generational impact. Like, you are going to be part of the fabric that strengthens, right, this culture, this society, this nation that we live in, by working through, by remaining strong,
Yeah.
by pushing through these moments, by again building a thriving marriage. It can be done even through brokenness and infidelity. We have seen it happen, and it can happen. And so I want to tell you that stand up, fight for marriages. Your marriage is an example that other people are looking at, friends, neighbors, your family, your children, your grandchildren. They are looking, they are watching. How will you walk this out?
Yeah.
How will you honor God? So I want to challenge you. How is your marriage honoring God and reflecting who He is to a culture around us? When people say, we need help, are they coming to you? Right? Even if it's not perfect, will they come to you? We live
good.
right now, again, in this time, in this culture, where we have to stand together and display what it means to have a marriage that honors God. And it takes work. And it's not always easy, but it's beautiful, and it's good, and it's generational.
Has it always been easy living with me?
It has not always been easy living with Shannon. I actually take more room up than she does.
Why don't you ask me?
There we are.
Why don't you ask me that?
Shannon.
Yes.
Is it joyous living with me all the time?
No, not all the time. No, it's not. So it's work.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's fun work,
Yeah.
But then sometimes it's hard.
It can be difficult.
Yeah. You are difficult sometimes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's a compliment.
And I always love you because I choose to. It's not a feeling.
Yeah.
I don't wake up and I go, how do I feel today about Javier? I choose to love you. I don't always like you. I want you to know that.
That's true. That's okay.
It's okay.
That's for a whole nother podcast there. This podcast was just to kind of bring you into the space to, again, reiterate what we stand for, who we are, why we do what we do, but also what we're hearing in culture and society. And so share it with others. Remember, we are a partner-supported ministry, so we need your support.
Yes.
Your monthly donations help us consistently be able to do marriage boot camps and workshops and the work that we do across the country, and the resources that we provide. And so review, rate this podcast, because it goes up in the algorithm things and the internet, and people can find us. And it's amazing. So
the interwebs.
Always remember, you're loved. We love you. There is hope. God is able. And remember that in marriage, you don't have to.
You get to.
Have an incredible week, and we will see you soon.
Go vote.
Yes, go out and vote now. Put us on pause and go vote. Thank you for listening to the 24/7 Marriage Podcast. Help us expand our reach by rating and leaving us a review on iTunes. Make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. For more information on the work we do and how to support 24/7 Marriage, head on over to 247marriage.org and click on Partner with Us. Until next week, remember, in marriage you don't have to, you get to.